If you've been injured at an Airbnb or a VRBO, you need to watch this video because these cases are unique and you're going to want to do some things to protect your legal rights. So stay tuned. Hi, my name is Michael Coker and I'm a personal injury lawyer in the state of Georgia. Now, this is going to give you some advice of what you need to do if you're injured at a rental property. Airbnb and VRBO have become really widely used in our area. Sometimes you rent them with friends, sometimes you just need an extra place to stay, but they're becoming more and more commonplace, both in the state of Georgia and nationwide. But when it comes to who's responsible if you're injured, it's sometimes hard to tell the correct entity. And that's why if you were injured at a VRBO or an Airbnb, you need to watch this video to get some really important information. First, it depends on the type of injury that you suffered. Now, if there's some negligence involved, typically, in many cases, Airbnb and VRBO will have some level of insurance that will cover you in the event that you're injured at a location. But sometimes they like to deflect liability back towards the property owner. And so maybe there's some sort of defect in the property that could have been fixed, or maybe the person had some work done at the property and let's say some electrical work. VRBO and Airbnb may point back to that electrical contractor if maybe there's a fire or something happens to point the finger at them. Now, most important though is that you as the renter, it depends on how you rented the property. If you rented the property through Airbnb or through VRBO, you then had a contractual relationship with those entities. And the best legal argument, at least in the state of Georgia, is that they should be responsible, that those entities should be responsible. And so therefore, that's the best way to start the case. But the problem is that you're going to need an attorney that understands these type of cases. Airbnb and VRBO cases are notorious for being difficult to find out who's actually responsible for your injuries. Is it the electrical contractor, as we mentioned before? Is it the Airbnb company? Is it the VRBO? And so the only way to know for sure who's responsible is to call a lawyer who handles these type of cases. And so I recommend you do that. And we obviously would be more than happy to talk to you and give you our experience of who might be responsible for your case. But the first thing that you want to do if you're injured is provide notice to the entities. So you want to reach out to Airbnb, you want to reach out to VRBO and let them know the incident happened and that you were injured. Now, for most individuals, I recommend that you call an attorney immediately and let the attorney provide that notice, because you never know when one of those two entities, you might be speaking to them on the phone or you might be chatting with them through an app, and basically anything you say could potentially be used against you to limit your case later. And so these are really important conversations that happen early on. And so if you have an attorney speaking on your behalf, they're going to know what you should or should not say. If you're handling this communication on your own, you run the risk of being in a situation where you might accidentally say something, not knowing that you're damaging or hurting your case. And so even though the notice requirement is really important, it's best to let an attorney handle that aspect of the case. Now, during this notice, why is this important? Because many of these Airbnbs, many of these VRBOs have cameras, for example, that may have recorded the incident. They might have some sort of proof, let's say photographs that show that there was some glaring issue with this property that maybe the owner or Airbnb didn't catch or didn't know. And so all these things are important when establishing your case. And so if you provide notice without an attorney, these videos might disappear. These photographs that show that you might need to win your case or effectively could be gone. And so a good attorney will go ahead and preserve anything that's posted online. Will pull copies of these photos, will save them to your file, and then they'll also send appropriate letters called spoliation letters, which provide more detail and some legal punishments if that video is not protected. And so only through an attorney can they take these different items and make sure that your case is completely preserved and completely protected. Now, people always ask me with, Airbnb, well, do you ever go after the homeowner? Do you ever go after the person that rented their property? And the answer is it depends. Again, there's certain types of cases that Airbnb may point the finger back at the owner of the property and say they didn't do something right or they did something improperly. But what's difficult is sometimes these owners are not reporting to their own insurance that they're renting out the property for Airbnb. And so sometimes you're dealing with insurance companies who may do what's called issue a denial and refuse to pay because the person didn't notify that this had now become a rental property. And so as you can see, there's really two parts of a case that make these cases extremely complicated. First is who's responsible and do you have a case legally for your injury? And second, is there even insurance to cover that injury? And so again, an experienced attorney is going to understand these two aspects, is going to take the appropriate steps to A, make sure your case is protected, and then B, make sure that there's insurance coverage, because it's hard to know in what type of cases whether or not Airbnb or VRBO's insurance covers the case, whether the property owner's homeowner's policy would cover the case, or again, whether there's some third party that might be responsible. And so all these things matter. And so a really good law firm will have a checklist that they will go through on Airbnb cases and to make sure that every box is checked, everything is protected, so that we know exactly what insurance covers and what type of case you have. Now, obviously, as I said before, these cases are extremely complicated. And so the best thing for you to do is to call an experienced attorney in your jurisdiction or your town that might be able to help you. Obviously, we're more than happy to direct you to somebody who understands these type of cases, even if you don't live in the state of Georgia. You can give us a call. I've got contacts all across the country to put you in contact with somebody that can help with these extremely complicated cases. But if you are in Georgia, we handle these cases all across the state. And we've handled them from St. Simon's Island to Savannah to downtown Atlanta. And so these are cases that are definitely something that you need to look into. You need to make sure that you call an attorney immediately so that your case is protected. If you like getting these updates and learning more about Georgia law, obviously like and subscribe to this podcast and we'll keep the updates coming. But until next time, everyone stay safe out there and thanks for watching.